Hi again, sheepherd. After the awful experience that was my last countdown, I feel as though we should do a countdown that is more positive, or at least involves objectively better PSAs. Surely there are some good PSAs tackling neurodiversity that aren't as insulting as the ones I reviewed in the last countdown. Oh wait, there are? Yay! Well, without any further ado, I present the top 20 neurodiversity PSAs.
Don't talk shit about me. You know it makes me mad and it comes back to bite you in the ass, and I feel so surrounded by all these pebbles covering the mountain.
Man, I'm about to fly this thing myself. This autopilot is being crazy. I think it's bipolar or something.
Well, that makes two of us.
What's that?
I have bipolar disorder, and I'm your co-pilot. You and me have been flying a long time, and I know you don't think I'm crazy, but you might want to watch what words you toss around.
Wow, this guy in 7A is crazy. He just ate his 12th bag of nuts. He is nuts. I mean, leave some for the rest of us.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, he was crazy hungry, I guess.
Is this crazy?
Yes, that was crazy.
How's about this? How about that? Was that crazy?
Yeah, I've gotta admit, that was pretty crazy.
Wrong. Nobody's crazy. Using those kind of words alienates peoples, makes them feel like it's them against the world. Plenty of us got mental health conditions, but that doesn't mean we're crazy.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. You know what? I'm gonna go give the guy in 7A some more nuts.
I did shit on this PSA in my top 10 scariest mental health PSAs, but that was because I did not understand it. I do understand the PSA wasn't meant to be patronizing, but I still found it to be such. I admit I cringe when people use OCD to refer to perfectionism and bipolar to refer to someone being unhinged, but that's more because there's words that better sum those things up. I also dig the animation style. The reason I put this PSA so low is because I just personally find it a little too preachy, and that's not something I like to see in a PSA. This PSA is creepy as hell, I admit it, and it is a pretty accurate representation of OCD. However, it's at the bottom because it portrays a pretty commonly perpetuated stereotype that OCD sufferers have a severe fear of germs and constantly hand wash. While this is one of many compulsions sufferers of the condition can face, and at least the kid with OCD isn't depicted as someone obsessed with cleanliness. There are many other manifestations of the disorder, such as severe religious paranoia, pyrophobia, and many other obsessive compulsions. It's not that this is a bad PSA at all, I just wish it would have explored other obsessive compulsions besides hand washing.
Do you know somebody with autism? Autism is much more common than most people think. About 1 in 100 people have autism. That's more than 700,000 in the UK alone. So chances are that someone you know, or work with, or love has the condition. What is autism? Autism is a lifelong developmental disability that affects how we communicate with and relate to others, and it affects how we make sense of the world around us. Lots of things that people take for granted, like body language and metaphors, can be confusing and alienating for us. Autism is a spectrum condition, so that whilst we all share certain difficulties, our autism will affect us in different ways. Some of us have been to university and hold down jobs, whilst others need a lifetime of specialist support. Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism. People with Asperger's syndrome are often of average or above average intelligence. They have fewer problems with speech, but may still have difficulties with understanding and processing language. What is autism like? For us, the world can be a confusing mass of people, events, and places. Sometimes we struggle to make sense of the world, and this can make us anxious. Every person with autism is different. That's what makes it so difficult to understand. But some of the characteristics that we have include a love of routines, sensory issues such as noises or smells or light, and having special interests. Some of us experience difficulties in understanding and relating to other people, and having a social life can be that much harder for us. For some of us, for example, going to a party can be really hard because we don't know what's going to happen or who will be there, and it often gets too noisy, which can be upsetting. Other people with autism have trouble reading facial expressions, understanding jokes or sarcasm, or common phrases like break a leg. Even phrases people use every day like it's cool can be disorientating. You think they're asking you to turn the air conditioning off. Many people with autism don't look disabled. Parents of children with autism often say that people simply think their child is naughty, while we adults find that we are misunderstood. That is why it is called a hidden disability. What causes autism? The exact cause of autism is still being investigated, but research suggests that a combination of factors, genetic and environmental, may account for changes in brain development. Autism is not caused by a person's upbringing or their social circumstances. Is there a cure? There is no cure for autism, but there are interventions that enable learning and development which may be helpful. You can find out more by going to www.autism.org.uk/approaches. Diagnosis. If you or someone you know thinks they have autism, they can contact their GP, who can refer them to a specialist for diagnosis. So how can you help? There are many good people doing good work for autism up and down the country, but we need the support of the wider community. Together we can break down barriers. Together we can ensure that autism, which is far more common than other conditions that get far more attention, remains on the agenda. We hope that you will join us in helping more people with autism lead the life they choose. If you want to learn more about autism, go to www.autism.org.uk or click here. You can receive continuous news and information about autism by becoming a member of the National Autistic Society. As a member, you will receive Your Autism magazine quarterly, which includes news about autism, stories from people living with autism, practical tips, and much more. You will also receive regular e-newsletters, an autism alert card, and exclusive voting rights which help influence how the National Autistic Society, the leading UK charity for people with autism, can continue to help people with autism. Accept difference, not indifference. Thank you.
A pretty straightforward PSA describing the many different types of autism and the various difficulties. I like how it describes it as a disorder that just makes people act a bit differently, though I did cringe a bit at the over 9,000 reference, because It didn't exactly age well. Plenty of autistic people, such as myself, are pretty big weebs, and Dragon Ball Z is one of the most normie anime there are. Although I'm probably a bit biased because I based my entire character design off of Chihiro from Danganronpa, and I constantly reference that visual novel series. Just not as commonly on this channel as I do on Discord.
Hello, baby. Where are you going? Home changing nappy?
No, actually, I was just going to the kennel to see your mum.
Sure.
Right, baby.
Hello, baby. Where are you going? Home changing nappy?
I'm not a baby, but I don't wear nappies.
What do you think you're looking at? What's wrong with you? You sick perv, stop staring at me! Why are you looking at our friend? What are you doing, robot boy? What's wrong with that? Disgusting. So disgusting. What's wrong with that? Disgusting. Sick, dirty little pervert. So disgusting. What's the matter with you? It's what you get when you do stuff like that.
Oh, come on. We've got to go.
We've got to call this one.
I was in the classroom and there was a girl in front of me and she was tapping my foot, accidentally sort of thing. So I kicked her back kind of thing, thinking she'd, and then realising sort of maybe that I'd made a mistake. Sort of as she looked up and I looked up, I smiled. So because I didn't want to sort of come across nasty or horrible, I just smiled instead. But then I left the classroom, and that's when she started saying to everyone, saying that I touched her up and that I, so basically as simple as that, really. And that went on throughout the whole day. I think it was the next day that, after school, as we were walking out the main entrance, someone came up behind me and kicked me. I luckily managed to stay on feet rather than fall to the floor. But I didn't know what to do. I just sort of turned around and just continued walking as if nothing happened, sort of thing. A few name calls, don't know what, I can't remember. But luckily they didn't follow me home or anything, but yeah.
Spastic, retard, old face, little freak, multitude really. Every swear name with every other word you could think of, I think I've probably been called at some time or another.
How I coped at school was, and throughout all of my schooling, because I went to 3 different schools, was I coped by being very compliant and very, I developed slave and master type relationships where I'd be totally allow the other person to dominate, control and abuse me.
I'd be walking down the street and somebody would pull my shorts and knickers down and I'd be standing there half naked in the street, and even though I was sort of 12, 13, I mean that's a very horrible thing to have done to you. People would graffiti on the bus shelter, like sort of anti-robbing graffiti.
For instance, there was one boy who was my best friend, who was my worst friend. I never had any my best friends were my worst friends, because I was just open myself to be taken advantage of. So on one occasion I remember planning to burgle my parents' house because my friend said it would be a good idea. So I just went along with that plan.
I stayed home for a few days while Mum contacted the school. And yeah, so it was basically stayed home for a few days, and even one of the teachers said like he shouldn't have smiled, whereas I think if they if they understood it as well, it would have helped the scenario as well. So yeah, it was a yeah.
And how did it make you feel?
Horrible. Singled out and stuff like this. So.
Feelings are very complicated for people with Asperger's syndrome because our feelings can be very fragmented and compartmentalised. So at the time I was so split and cut off from my feelings, but deep down I know I felt a sense of almost annihilation. I felt a complete inhuman, not human.
This PSA gave me some negative memories. Like I said, I'm on the autism spectrum myself, and I remember getting bullied a lot in my freshman and sophomore years of high school, which, for those that watch my channel outside the United States, those are years 9 and 10 in America, though granted, I wasn't bullied to the extent these people were. People didn't tag bus stations with graffiti decrying me. I wasn't labeled as a sick pervert except for once when I was the victim of a cruel prank that pretty much destroyed my chances with a girl I liked back in 7th grade. And nobody went out of their way and pantsed me. But I did remember acting a fool just so people would talk to me, having papers thrown at me, getting called every name under the sun, and all that crazy shit. And it's not that I didn't understand I was being bullied, it's I didn't want to believe it. Because I didn't want to believe people could be that horrible. Like, I probably should have realized it when I was getting called, pardon my French, but a faggot and a retard almost every single day. Oh god, there's a reason this PSA brought up some pretty negative memories for me. Because I remember that exact same feeling, like, I'm going to act like your personal foolish bitch boy just so I can have any semblance to what you'd call friends.
Having a lot of green around me is where I feel the most comfortable. I've spent the majority of my life outside in nature, walking all my dogs that I've had over the years, and that's where I feel most at peace and one with myself. The differences I found when I was diagnosed autistic, I'm still kind of working them all out a little bit. There's still so many, but I think the biggest things was looking back on my life and my childhood and school especially, and like relationships with people, just helped me make sense. Like, it made me understood why I couldn't learn the traditional way in school, why I was sort of behind on things, and why I sort of was picked on in a way as like a really vulnerable sort of kid. And even as a person in my 20s and even very early 30s, I was always been really vulnerable, and it just made me see like, wow, okay, it's not all me, this isn't like, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with me, because that's what I always felt. We know women and non-binary people and of any gender, they can be autistic, and the spectrum is so vast, and it's still new to a lot of people knowing what is on that spectrum and all the different types that you can have. You can be really intense at one part of that spectrum and then not so much in the other. Like, there are loads of things I can do that I know from online mainly that other autistic people cannot do at all, and I excel in that. But they do things that I literally couldn't even think about doing. The reason I wanted to put myself forward for this campaign was a voice like mine and the experiences I've had. I know there are very similar ones out there, but for me being a non-binary person, I just felt I haven't seen many stories like that, really. And to be able to, for me to get my voice out, knowing that there are hundreds and thousands of other kids and people and even adults like me that have had the very similar experiences of being brought up as a girl and as a woman and projecting and, you know, being perceived as that for so long, finally getting to the place where I know who I am better. I think that's important to have that voice, because I never saw that growing up. There was nothing for me to see of that. And I know just if one person sees it, then that is enough to help one person. I think if someone sees themselves in somebody else, that makes them feel seen and heard and included. And those are really important things for people with autism, because you spend a lot of your life never feeling like that, ever. You always felt outcast and weird or difficult or angry or all those horrible things that we're told. And we're not like that at all. Like, that's not the reality. And if someone can just see my story and be like, oh wow, okay, I relate to some or none of those things, whatever that is, but it helps them, then that's great. Because if that was me as a kid or a young person or a young adult seeing myself reflected back at me, I wouldn't have had to get to this point in my life, at this age in my life. You know, I would have been able to do things a lot sooner, and that can save some people's lives, which I think is really, really important.
Recent PSA, and like most of the National Autism Council's PSAs, awesome. A lot of NBs, like myself, are on the autism spectrum. I'm a demi-boy, and I came out last year, and I can relate to Lex's story a lot. I had always been raised to be one specific way, being raised a boy and perceived as a man most of my life. I was diagnosed as a little kid, but I've still had a lot of trouble in this world. Part of why these PSAs appeal to me is because I've had some of these experiences as an autistic, openly NB person. Granted, I am aware of the fact that me being assigned male at birth made it more likely my autism would have been detected, but still, I do in a way relate to Lex's experiences with not fitting in with the gender they were assigned at birth, and their autism kind of making them realize that.
I can't breathe. I have migraines, numbness, weight loss. I live with it every day. The illness that I'm suffering from is an anxiety disorder, and it deserves to be treated like any other illness. But it's not.
Now here's a scary PSA, and yes, anxiety is a form of neurodiversity. It's called anxiety disorder. And it makes a great point. Anxiety, while being a mental illness, can be just as crippling as any physical illness. Take it from your old pal Antonio, who has first-hand experience. Anxiety is no walk in the park, and attacks can be brutal. Like, holy shit, there have been instances in which I can't even talk to new people without freezing up. I feel this lady on a spiritual level.
Uh-oh. Mental Sarah from accounts.
Hi. Oh, Ken. He always makes me feel uncomfortable.
It's hard enough to cope with a mental illness without being judged. 1 in 5 of us lives with mental illness. Your understanding and support makes a big difference.
Sarah. How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling better, thanks. Thank you for asking.
Rethink mental illness.
That this campaign in Australia had, but arguably my favorite. Seriously, there needs to be more done towards breaking down the stigma towards those with mental illness in the workplace. It's hard enough to have issues with one's mental health. We don't need to be bullied and looked down upon at work because of said issues.
Nobody's ever really heard of this condition. It's very, very common. 1% of the general adult population are thought to have it to a clinically diagnosable level. So it's on par with something like schizophrenia or OCD, which everybody's heard of, and there's a lot of NHS services equipped to kind of assist with. But so it's very common, but you can spend years and years going through doctors and the sort of mental health partnerships and getting assessments and being referred from one person to the next and to the next and back to the original person and onward again. And I think the average diagnosis time for this condition is 7 to 12 years. So my condition is depersonalization disorder, depersonalization, derealization disorder, whatever. I think it's 75% of people experience both together, DP and DR, where you can get them independently, but most people experience both. You're looking around, but you feel like there's a pane of glass between you and everything going on. It's as if, words are coming out of your mouth, but you don't feel like you're consciously thinking them up. They just kind of happen, and somehow you make sense. You walk to the bathroom and walk back again, and you're not really sure how you're putting one leg in front of the other. You're just kind of doing it. The lack of help, I think, is probably the most difficult thing, and it's certainly something that I've said to people before, that yes, living with the condition is hell, but the grind of dealing with the mental health services is often worse. Where I find myself nowadays is I've been through all the help I can access, and I'm now worse than when I started, significantly worse. I've tried everything possible. I've tried every medication I can get somebody to prescribe for me, and nothing's made a difference. And now I find myself still getting worse, having every angle I've tried become a dead end. Thinking, well, where does this stop? What does my future look like? Because I'm struggling so much now. I'm only 32. What's this going to be like when I'm 60? Is it going to carry on getting worse? Is that a future I feel I can get motivated by? If there's no emotions there and it's all is going to be this sort of dark cloud, it's very difficult to feel positive about the future. I want to see the healthcare keeping up with the growing awareness in the condition, and more clinics opening, more mental health partnerships being aware of depersonalization, having clinicians trained in treating it, and just taking out some of that stress of dealing with the mental health services, trying to fight to get to somewhere where you need to be, but meeting resistance the whole way. So that's what I want to see happening in the future with depersonalization.
This PSA pulls no punches about how dissociation can make its sufferer's life difficult. And while mental health care is better in the UK than it is in America, dissociative disorders are still very misunderstood. In his case, Joe randomly loses his sense of self without any control, unlike the most commonly diagnosed dissociative disorder, DID, which cringe-ass TikTokers fake because, ew, I'm so fucking quirky. It must be rough to feel like you are not there, but still in your own body. That must be absolutely terrifying to experience.
When I was detained, I lost all autonomy. My words fell on deaf ears. What I wanted from treatment and what I didn't want were not listened to. I wasn't involved in my treatment or my recovery journey at all. And eventually I gave up, and I felt like maybe I shouldn't be involved. The first time I was restrained, it was to be given medication by force. I was standing in the corridor with the other patients when several nurses approached me and restrained me. I was dragged into another patient's bedroom and held down by my wrists, my ankles, and my face was pushed up against the floor. And I was injected with medication. There's nothing as terrifying as being held down, not being able to move. And you know, this is by people who are supposed to care for you, and you're pinned down to the floor. It's degrading, it's terrifying.
Context for this PSA. The Mental Health Act, signed into British law in 1983, provides the legislation by which people diagnosed with a mental health disorder can be detained in a hospital or police custody and have their disorder assessed or treated against their wishes, informally known as sectioning. Basically, it's a law allowing the cops to detain those with mental health issues for their own good, and many Brits rightfully consider the actions under it to be a human rights abuse, which has some merit to it since the act is false imprisonment at its core. And this PSA does not pull punches on the graphic descriptions Georgie provides of her imprisonment, which is why I put the content warning ahead of it so you could skip right to my commentary. Basically, she talks about how she was forced medication against her will, how the cops just kind of brought her over to the institution against her will. It's a pretty fucking scary story. And honestly, the act has good intentions. It prevents people with serious mental health issues from hurting themselves or others, but the way it is used is absolutely horrendous.
It's time to rethink mental illness and violence.
People with severe mental illness are usually dangerous.
The truth is, people with mental illness are no more violent than anybody else. Associating mental illness with violent crime can actually keep people from getting the help they need.
People do recover from mental illness. For help, call 800-510-9132, 24 hours a day.
Ah yes, another PSA dispelling myths about people with mental illness. This cop is telling us that the stigma of all mentally ill people being more likely to commit crime is only helping us to keep from seeking help. And in the end, this is hurting us because, we're not getting help. It's a shame that such a destructive stigma exists, as it only hurts instead of helping people. Other than that, not really much to say on this PSA.
Is it Stephen? Please, follow me.
Congrats on all the awards. So, tell me about yourself.
So, what would you say your strengths and weaknesses are?
Really? You don't look it.
Just so you know, the role has changed ever so slightly, but it's nothing major.
Let's find out a bit about you. So what experience do you have? What skills, what abilities? Anything?
It doesn't seem like you've had a job for a few months.
6 months?
A year? Why is that?
Okay. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Are you okay?
I'm not unemployable. I'm autistic. And sometimes I get too much information.
may notice an abundance of National Autism Council PSAs on this list, but honestly, seeing how positively received and well made these PSAs are, can you really blame me, honestly? I've always found the POV type of PSAs interesting, and this one is one of the best. Job interviews are hard to do, especially when you're on the spectrum, but just because we get overwhelmed by them does not mean we're unhireable. We just get overwhelmed by the constant stimuli thrown our way in our daily lives. We're just overwhelmed by the world.
When you're little and you fall down, people ask you, like, where's the graze? Where's the bruise? Nowadays, it's like, what, do you point to your head and your heart? It's really hard for me to remember my parents saying that they were proud of me. Sometimes I'd be so scared of letting them down that I just wouldn't come home sometimes. So I would go and sleep on park benches or stay in like the school library, like hide behind the bookshelves until the librarian went home.
Well done, Emily. You are a very clever girl. Would you like to give me more of
I felt this growing emptiness inside of me, and it was like this sink that could never be filled because at some point I lost the plug. And no matter how much I tried to fill it with friends, with family, with studies, it just felt like it could never be filled. I just felt like I was a burden to everyone. So if I couldn't change the situation I was in, I would just, I guess, remove myself from it. So when I was 14, I tried to end my life. Not many people knew. I just put the mask right back on and went back to school. For me, there's like a wall of masks, and like I'll go into different situations and no one would really see the real me. It was so weird experiencing anxiety and depression at the same time, because my depression made me want to like stay in bed all the time, but my anxiety would just make me so anxious about not doing anything. Or I wanted to sleep all the time, but my anxiety would like keep me awake with these what if thoughts. What if that person who like said that they liked me the other day was actually lying? Is this awful second thought that like everything that you believe to be true is not actually true? A few years later, I'd started uni, I'd been in therapy the whole time, but I was so tired. You know, fighting that unwinnable war in my head. So when I was 18, I tried to end my life again. I didn't necessarily want to kill myself. It was just more so I wanted the pain to stop. When you Google like depression or anxiety or anything like that, it comes up with a million articles that are written by people who might not have experienced it. Whereas to me, I like went into this really big deep dive on like what someone else actually feels like. Like, am I the weird emotions that I'm experiencing and these colors and this heaviness? Is that just me? I discovered these online forums where people were sharing their different experiences and stories of mental health, and I can't really tell you how healing it was to really find out that I wasn't alone. I felt genuinely motivated to actually get better. Creative stuff has always been really important to me in my healing journey, and video games are like one of the few places where I really felt like I could be me. I can shape the world and me to be the person who I believe myself to be, not who everyone else wants me to be. There's so much stuff I would want to tell my younger self. There's nothing that you need to do or be. Just being you is enough. That was the game changer. I'm okay where I'm at, and I've built a life that I want to keep living.
I absolutely love the work Beyond Blue has done, And this won't be their only PSA on this list. Unfortunately, I heavily relate to Emily, as, like them, I have struggled with both anxiety and depression, oftentimes separately, but there were instances in which they dueled inside my head. And it was fucking rough. Because I didn't have the motivation to do anything thanks to my depression, which was caused by my anxiety telling me nothing I was doing was good enough. It made me hate myself so much, and it was a constant vicious cycle and spiral, much like the one Emily describes. But I found the light at the metaphorical end of the tunnel, and I'm doing much better in life, and thankfully Emily is too. Honestly, Beyond Blue has done a lot for the Australian people when it comes to mental health, and this is why I love their work so much.
You wake up covered in sweat. People have tapped your laptop. They're listening in on your phone calls too. You try to type on your laptop, but they're controlling the words you put onto the screen. Your phone camera must be watching you. Is this some kind of reality show? You message people you used to know 5, 10 years ago. The replies start to trickle in, but you don't trust them. So you ignore the messages. They've all been infiltrated by the enemy. And who, you may ask, are the enemy? The police are after you. Or maybe it's Extinction Rebellion. The important thing is someone is after you. You can sort out the details of who later. You pack a bag of all the worldly possessions that will fit in one suitcase. You dial the emergency services, but think better of it and end the call. You won't get through to the real police. As you leave through the back door, you notice a pack of matches and you realise the box is significant in some way. They're going to burn you alive. You shiver and lock the door behind you. You light a cigarette and briefly wonder if you're meant to press the cherry against the skin on your hand. But you think better of it and start walking. You're walking through the streets and a bus arrives. Seems a bit convenient. You say to the other passengers and they laugh. You pass a cash machine and withdraw as much money as you can. You hide it in your bra. You might need it later for something. Then you notice that the leaves on the grass have been arranged rather than fallen. You're walking in the centre of the road with your suitcase, occasionally scuttling into the grass to move out of the way of tractors or lorries. People stop to offer you lifts, but you won't accept any because they're all part of the conspiracy. Please get in the car. One of them pleads, and you start to run away. Suddenly, a police car starts following you, and you stop to talk to them. His ID is so old and worn that you don't believe that it's real.
You're not real.
You tell him and keep walking. They kidnap you before you reach the nearest town. You're not real, you tell him, and then scream for someone to call the real police. After what seems like forever, the car pulls up outside a hospital. Everything in your room has significance, right down to the sanitary pad bags in the bathroom. You feel like this must be an escape the room or a video game, and if you can just work out the puzzle, you'll be free. Is that a camera up there on the ceiling? Every hour or so, someone shines a torch through your door. This must be some sort of punishment. You realise that they're going to maim you in some way. Perhaps they will amputate your legs. Perhaps things will look brighter in the morning. You fall asleep.
I had low expectations, seeing as how this PSA was made with AI art, but it's amazingly made and an amazing depiction of psychosis. This poor woman is going insane with her mind as her own worst enemy, and she is confused by everyone that's trying to help her, as her psychosis is actively turning her against everyone. It's hard to watch, but it's absolutely a powerful PSA, and one of the most poignant depictions and visceral depictions of this disorder.
This is how I see myself. I see myself as a daughter, a sister, and a best friend. As a person you can rely on. I see myself meeting someone that I can share my life with. I see myself singing, dancing, and laughing until I cannot breathe. And also crying sometimes. I see myself following my dreams, even if they are impossible. Especially because they're impossible. I see myself as an ordinary person with an important, meaningful, beautiful life. This is how I see myself. How do you see me?
Ah yes, a Down syndrome PSA. As a sibling to someone with Down syndrome, this PSA is absolutely touching, and it reminded me so much of my sister's struggles of wanting to be seen as more than just the girl with Down syndrome. As my mother always said, Down syndrome may have Misty, but it doesn't have her. This PSA, using this point, paints them as people just like you and me, not objects to be pitied and given the condescending bless your heart talk to. And this is one of many core Down PSAs to be featured on this list. They're that good if you ask me.
People with Down syndrome have special needs. Special needs? Really? It would be special if people with Down syndrome needed to eat dinosaur eggs. That would be special.
One dinosaur egg. Enjoy.
Man, I think you were totally right about Lindsay.
If we need to wear a giant suit of armor, that would be special.
I got a condo in Manhattan. Baby girl, what's happening? So gonna get to clapping. Go pop a phone.
It would be special if we needed to be massaged by a cat. If we needed to be woken up by a celebrity.
Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. How are you? You may know me from Scrubs or Office Space. A few darker flicks, The Rock, Platoon, Wall Street. Funny story, I played Ben.
Get out.
My bad.
That would be special. But what we really need is education, jobs, and opportunities, friends, and some love. Just like everybody else. Are these needs special?
lot of these PSAs have been serious in nature, but that's what makes this one stand out. This PSA is very funny, and I love the things that the people with Down syndrome describe as special, such as having to eat dinosaur eggs, wearing a suit of armor, cat massages, and being woken up by celebrities. In truth, they're not all that different from us and just need the same things we do. I've talked about my sister Misty, who has this condition, and I think she'd be a huge fan of this PSA.
Ash, it's 7 o'clock.
I'm not going in.
You are going in.
I can't.
You don't get up and get dressed now, then there's no sleepover on Friday.
That's not fair. Why are you punishing me?
Because I've got to get you to school, love. Come on, now, please.
Come on, there's your pancakes.
Thanks.
Have you not had your breakfast yet?
She's on it, she's on it.
We're 1 minute late.
Traffic's a little bit lighter on a Friday.
Lily, you're so dozy. Can you hurry up for once? You're making me so late.
Ash, you've got to eat before we go to school.
Have a good day, okay?
I'm leaving. Hurry up.
Ash, where's your blazer?
I don't have time.
Go and get it. Go on, go and get it. You've got drama today, girl.
Yeah, third lesson. Mum, can you turn the radio off? He was really with one of those really annoying teachers and forever one was like our name. Oh my god, Lily! Shut up!
Ash, what have I told you about the hoodie?
Oh, come on.
Laser on, please.
Are we already done?
Okay, Ash, let's have a look.
You're gonna fail.
That is exactly right.
How are you meant to do that without a calculator?
It's a bit tougher for you, I think.
Oh, I don't have my overlay. I can't read this.
Hang on, see if I've got anything that will...
You okay, Ash? Every lesson so makes funny. So someone pushed me on purpose. I don't know, they pushed me. Okay. I want to go home.
All right, I'll ring your mum. You go and sit in the sensory room. All right, love. Let's get you home.
Dad, can you fix this?
Don't get a please.
Please.
Okay.
Wait, you can't see this, but I can? You have certain skills, like...
Why is it always when I pick? Subtitles. Put the subtitles on.
Subtitles on.
Ash, it's time to get up, love.
Mum, have you seen my hoodie?
I think your dad washed it yesterday. It's on the banister.
Are you sure it's not here? Lily, have you moved my hoodie? Obviously I didn't. I'm gonna check your room because Ash, I told you.
Ash, do not go in Lily's room.
Lily, get off.
In upstairs. It'll be upstairs underneath your...
Look,
wet towels. And your blazer's on the floor.
Mum, Lily's taking it.
Oh, whoa. Wait, enough. Look.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
I'm not going to touch you. I'm just sitting here whilst you calm down, okay?
I need my hoodie to go into school. I am not going into school without it, and Lily's taken it.
I don't think she
She
has.
has.
I don't think she has. Okay? Calm. It's okay. It's okay. Calm yourself down a bit. It's okay. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Ash, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Build a cruise ship if you like, Scott, but the rest of us, we're gonna make marshmallow towers, okay?
This on Re-Ads' channel, and it's a really good PSA. This PSA talks about how clothes can provide comfort and familiarity to autistic people, and how the ratio of boys diagnosed with autism to girls diagnosed with autism is very mismatched. Ash here was diagnosed at 14, and her hoodie is very important to her as an autistic person. As you see in the PSA, she flips out without it. I feel the same way about my stuffies, to be fair, and I'm 19 years old. Hoodies are also very comforting to me, especially the one I own. And this PSA is hard to watch at times due to the fact that, to the untrained eye, Ash may seem like kind of an asshole, but it's very well acted.
Perfect. Come on then, have a great day. Thanks for keeping an eye on it. Off somewhere fun today? Are you alright?
What gift have you got, Sam? Is it a calculator?
Off somewhere fun today? Are you alright? Off somewhere fun today? You alright?
What gift did you get, Sam? Is it a calculator?
Sorry, did he scare you?
Is it a calculator? What gift did
Sorry,
you get?
did
Is it a
I
calculator?
What are you doing? You trying to kill yourself? Are you blind?
Have you seen this epic fail? What's that, Mom? Have you seen this epic fail?
Somewhere fun today? Are you alright?
What are you doing? You trying to kill yourself? Are you blind?
Sorry, did he scare you?
Is it a calculator?
Sorry, did he scare you?
I thought you
What was your name?
We're out of nuggets. Do you want to see the special?
Can I get past?
Are you okay? How can I help?
I'm autistic, and sometimes I get too much information.
Now we're in the big leagues. This is from the campaign we looked at earlier today, and personally, this is the better PSA. This girl's brain gets fixated on everything she's told until she breaks down because she was never really given a chance to process the information, and I feel that all too well. My brain gets overloaded with so much information that sometimes I break down. Fitting that I became a media reviewer, huh? An occupation that literally forces me to fill my brain with a bunch of information. Although I'd say the main media I handle is PSAs pretty much exclusively, so I suppose that's on me. Nonetheless, I really like that this is a lesson being taught because good God, could some people here in America use this lesson.
I've been expecting you. What? Don't tell me you don't recognize me. Oh, still don't know who I am. Let me try and help you with that. I'm the ill ease that you feel when you walk into a crowded room. You know, the hot and cold flushes that confuse you when you're already confused enough. I am the one that raises the whip to your already racing heart. I am the tightening of your chest, the snowballing waves that feel like they might become an avalanche and can just bury you in an instant. My friend, I am the obsessive and I'm the compulsive. I'm the voice, you know, the one. It's always questioning everything you do, everything you think. And I am every single staring eye that watches you. And every one of those places that you try so desperately to avoid. So, Now that we have become acquainted, what are you going to do about it?
Now, this is one of my favorite PSAs of all time. I enjoy it quite a bit. Now, you see, a certain organization, mental disorders can be portrayed by people without being absolutely offensive. Ben Mendelsohn plays this anxiety character amazingly and so charismatically that many commenters on this PSA's YouTube upload consider him a Tumblr sexy man. And honestly, can you blame him? He is so, I don't know, just intimidating, yet also charismatic. He just has that sort of bad boy energy to him. And his only real weakness would be you not knowing he exists. But that in turn is the only real power he has over you. That you don't know he exists in your mind, so he's free to just pretty much do whatever he wants.
A piece of meat in the shape of a man without a mind is not a human being. Whether the body be deathly ill, damaged by accident, mentally blank because of brain deficiency, or criminally insane, those people who are so mentally defective that they cannot live in society should, as soon as they are identified as defective, be humanely dispatched.
Another amazing PSA. Here we have a gymnast with Down syndrome practicing while this hate speech goes on. We assume this to be the teachings of Hitler in 1935. However, it's revealed a Mensa member said this shit in 1995. It shows that, unfortunately, we do still have a long way to go when it comes to erasing the disease that is ignorance. And to this day, it's a disgusting, debilitating disease that plagues this moldy rock we live on. It would have been number 1 on this countdown, if not for this next PSA.
So we're thinking about chelation. You can get it done in Mexico, kind of cheap.
Can't you die from that?
He threw a fit and started screaming in the barbershop. It was so embarrassing.
Why did you let the barber touch him without asking?
I feel like she's, trapped somewhere in there.
But she's right there in front of you.
So sad, you know, we can't have birthday parties. I mean, she's too afraid.
Who are the parties for, you or her?
And what about school? He just doesn't get it.
Except that he learns differently.
He never tells me that he loves me. Do you know how hard that is?
Every time he touches you, he's saying he loves you.
Who said that?
I don't hear anything.
I've spent most of my life feeling like no one is listening. My name is Tammy, and I'm autistic. There's a community of autistic adults that needs to be included in the conversation. Don't tune us out. Visit rethinkingautism.com, then click Our Voice. Please, listen to what we have to say.
Here we have the best neurodivergent PSA of all. Here we have parents that don't understand their autistic kids and are griping about how hard their lives are. Meanwhile, Tammy, the woman in this PSA, she shuts down every point beautifully. When a mother brings up forcefully curing, and I put this in heavy air quotes, her child with chelation, Tammy brings up that this therapy can kill you. When a dad gripes about his son embarrassing him at the barbershop with an outburst, Tammy makes the point that he shouldn't have let the barber touch him without asking. When a mom says her real daughter is trapped behind her autism, Tammy states the obvious, she's right there in front of her. When a dad complains that he can't throw birthday parties for his daughter, Tammy brings up that the dad is mainly throwing the parties for himself. When a dad complains that his son can't learn in school, she tells him to accept that he learns differently. When a mom complains that her son never tells her he loves him, Tammy tells her that he shows his love in a different way. But unfortunately, it's all ignored by the parents who pretend not to hear anything. I remember feeling this all too well, as though I was not heard in discussions about myself, and I feel like Tammy knows this all too well, being an autistic woman. It's terrible how we are never considered in, situations that affect our lives. Rather, it's more so, oh, you're such a burden on those who care for you. I remember being talked at, not to, during meetings for school, and it made my mom cry because all that these people knew about me was written on that piece of paper describing who I was. And it honestly fucking sucks how little our opinions matter to the majority as neurodivergent people, because, we should have a say too. Our brains work just differently from yours. Well, ladies, gentlemen, and fellow non-binary daisies, we've reached the end of yet another video. Hopefully this one was much more enjoyable. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and if you've done all these things, join my Discord server, link in the video and description. Also, artists who are fans of the channel, please, by all means, feel free to send me fan art, whether in the server or DMs. If you've done all these things, y'all have a great day. Antonio out. Peace.